Her younger brother Rab held that honour, yet at 18 he was treated as a man. Though she was 20 years old, she was not given the same freedoms. But Rab knew better than to be sickly and grew up just as strong and tall as any of his elder brothers, while Jyne remained just Jyne. Though no one ever said it to her face, she knew that within the Cambell clan she was considered the runt of the litter. Jyne paused a moment, straining to hear sounds from the camp. She had been so excited when David had finally allowed her to travel to see her dower lands at Kinnock Abbey that she had not slept well and had risen early to care for her morning ablutions before the rest of the camp was awake. And now she was lost. No, not lost, just momentarily disoriented due to the fog. She was sure if she continued just a little further, something would start to look familiar. She would rather search for hours than admit to her overprotective brothers that she had gotten lost in a bit of mist. She continued walking in the thick grey fog which blanketed the rugged landscape. The moor was damp and boggy, and she hoped to avoid having wet feet for the rest of the day's journey. She hummed a bit to herself to keep up her spirits. Sometimes she dreamed of being caught up in some great moment of crisis. Her castle would be besieged, and elephants would burst through the gates. Everyone would panic, but she would somehow stand bravely against the onslaught to save the keep. Of course, she'd never actually seen an elephant, but she'd heard stories of Hannibal and his elephants and thought that if she were attacked by them, she could be brave. Then maybe her family could see her for something other than sickly little Jyne. She strained to see ahead of her in the fog and stepped onto something she thought was firm ground, but suddenly wasn't. Oh! She fell forward into a bog, gasping as the cold, muddy water engulfed her to her thighs. Oh no! She struggled, trying to find firm ground to drag herself out of the treacherous moor, but everywhere she touched was made of cold, wet mud. Her efforts were rewarded only by her sinking into the bog a few inches more. The freezing sludge seeped through her clothes and held her fast like an icy claw. The smell of rotting swamp gas made her gag. Her heart pounded in her throat, along with the remnants of her last meal. She had heard stories of people getting trapped in the bog and never returning. She clenched her teeth to stop them from chattering. Should she call for help? The thought of the looks on her brothers' faces to find her stuck in the bog shut her mouth. She made another try for solid ground, straining her reach for a crop of grass. She could almost make it. Her fingertips brushed tantalizingly against the stems of the grass, but there was nothing to grasp. She could not reach solid ground. Her efforts had only caused her to sink another few inches as fear slithered down her spine. Nothing she could do was going to get herself out. "Help! David! Rab! Help!" Her pride was gone. She only hoped her brothers would hear her before she was gone. "Can anyone hear me?" She had expected her siblings to come running as soon as she called. She could not be that far from camp, could she? She listened for footsteps, for any hint that help was on the way. She heard nothing. Panic surged within her, tinged with frustration. The one time she actually wanted her brothers to hover over her, and they were nowhere in sight. She made another lunge for solid ground, but the more she moved, the further the bog sucked her down, and soon she was up to her waist, panting with exertion and sheer terror. She closed her eyes and screamed with all her might, "Help! Help!" "Here, lassie, take my hand." A man, a stranger to her, flung himself onto the solid ground and reached out his hand over the murky bog. She grasped it, and he began to back up slowly, pulling her from the quagmire. He pulled hard, but the swamp resisted, as if unwilling to release its prize from its cold clutches. Finally, he wrenched her from the deadly swamp, and she collapsed beside him on firm ground. "Thank ye," she gasped, not sure if she was trembling from the fear of coming near death or the frozen chill of the mire still permeating her bones. "Are you hurt?" asked the stranger. He was a tall, lanky lad